Have you ever really thought about how secure your home is? And I'm not talking about locks on the doors. I mean, from the government itself. Today, we're jumping into this incredible story about how one woman's refusal to sell her little seaside home, well, it sparked a nationwide movement and actually changed the law in 40 states. It's a story about community, about defiance, and what it really means to be home.
And this quote right here, this is from the woman at the center of it all, Lori Ann Vendetti. And honestly, it just captures the entire spirit of the decade-long battle that was about to unfold. It was never about the money. It was all about principle. It really sets the stage for one of the most amazing David versus Goliath stories in modern American history.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Our story starts like a lot of good ones do down the Jersey Shore. We're in Long Branch, New Jersey, in a neighborhood that would pretty soon become a full-on battleground. And right at the heart of it all is Lori Vendetti, a woman whose family had roots in this community going way, way back. Now, this was not some wealthy, fancy enclave. Nope. It was a little community of 37 pretty modest houses, but they were absolutely immaculate, and they were so much more than just buildings. This was the kind of place where your neighbors were basically your family, where generations of kids grew up together on the beach. You know, the real value here wasn't on some property assessment. It was in the lives and the memories built over decades.
And you really get a sense of who Lori is by how she even got her home in the first place. Back in 1995, she wanted to be close to her parents after they retired there. Now, she wasn't the highest bidder for the house, but she made a totally different kind of offer. She promised the sellers that their family could come back and use the house every summer, so their sick grandmother wouldn't have to be uprooted. For years, Lori would even pretend the house still belonged to them, all just to keep this sweet old woman happy. It just shows you the kind of person she was, completely selfless and all about community. But then, just a few months after Lori moved in, the threat arrived. The city of Long Branch came up with a big redevelopment plan, and their idea of progress meant bulldozing all 37 of those homes to clear the way for a bunch of luxury condos. All of a sudden, Lori's quiet, peaceful community was directly in the crosshairs.
So, to really get what this fight was about, we've got to understand the weapon the city was planning to use, eminent domain. It's a power that comes from the Fifth Amendment, and it lets the government take private property for a clear public use, like building a school or a highway, as long as they pay you a fair price for it. Which, of course, leads to the big question, right? How on earth could taking homes from regular families only to hand the land over to a private developer to build fancy condos possibly count as public use? Well, the city found a loophole. And here it is. It's called the blighted loophole. The city basically argued that if they could just declare the entire neighborhood blighted, run down, in disrepair, then they could legally justify seizing all the properties for private development, all under the nice-sounding banner of urban renewal. It was a clever way to stretch the meaning of public use until it was almost unrecognizable. And to make their case, the city sent in fire department inspectors. And the results, well, they were a little suspicious, to say the least. Not a single one of the 37 well-kept homes was rated fair or even okay. Every single one was labeled poor. The stage was officially set. They had the justification they needed to declare the area blighted and call in the bulldozers. But this tight-knit community, facing the loss of absolutely everything, they did not back down. No way. They got organized. They formed a group called MTOTSA, which is an acronym for the 3 streets in the neighborhood: Marine Terrace, Ocean Terrace, and Seaview Avenue. The resistance had officially begun. Let's just look at the matchup here, because it really was a classic David versus Goliath situation. On one side, you've got 37 families on 3 little blocks, led by a homeowner, Lori. And on the other side, you have powerful developers with the full backing and power of the city government, who want to build what they literally called a playground for the wealthy. So why Lori? Why was she the one to lead this incredible fight? Well, the Institute for Justice, that's the public interest law firm that eventually took their case, they described her perfectly. They said she was principled, always trying to do what's right. She was calm under immense pressure. And she was just this kind, unifying force for her mostly older neighbors. They called her indispensable to the cause. The same selfless person who bought that house years before was, it turns out, the absolute perfect person for this fight. And I really have to stress, this was not a quick fight. This was a grueling 10-year-long war. It was a battle they fought in town halls, in the newspapers, and eventually in the highest court in the entire country. Let's just quickly trace how this decade of struggle played out. So the plan itself starts way back in '95.
For years, all through the early 2000s, MTSOA is organizing, holding rallies, fighting every single step. Then, by 2005, their story starts to get national attention. All that relentless effort finally pushes their case all the way to the Supreme Court, where, against all odds, they won. A stunning landmark victory. After 10 long years, they had saved their homes.
But this is where the story takes a really bittersweet turn. You see, winning the legal battle didn't just magically fix everything. The victory came with this hidden cost that really no one saw coming. So because of the fight, their little seaside neighborhood was suddenly in the national spotlight. Property values, they skyrocketed. And you know what comes with soaring property values, right? Soaring property taxes. For the community, which was mostly retired seniors on fixed incomes, the new tax burden was just too much to handle. After fighting for a decade to keep their homes, many of them were now being forced to sell them.
And the result is pretty heartbreaking. Of the original 37 families that fought tooth and nail for their community, only 4 are still there today, including Lori Vendetti. They won the war against eminent domain abuse, but in a cruel twist of irony, the forces of the market ended up doing what the bulldozers never could.
But the story does not end there. Because while the neighborhood itself was forever changed, the legacy of their fight completely reshaped the country. Their personal struggle had this massive nationwide impact. Just let this number sink in for a second. 40. As a direct result of the fight led by Lori Vendetti and her neighbors in Long Branch, 40 states passed stricter laws to protect homeowners from the exact kind of eminent domain abuse that they had faced. One small community's decade of struggle created new protections for millions and millions of Americans. And this quote from Lori, it just says it all, doesn't it? Their fight became so much bigger than just 3 blocks in New Jersey. They became a symbol, a case study for law students, and a real force for protecting one of the most basic American rights, the right to your own home. So we want to leave you with this question. Lori's story really forces us to ask what progress even means. Is it shiny new condos and a bigger tax base? Or is it the right of a community, a real community, to just exist? It's a question that towns and cities all over the country are still trying to answer today. Where do you draw that line?